Hey Band Network Leadership Series. Welcome to the Hey Band Network Leadership Series. Today we have two outstanding and wonderful guests, Mike Howard from Vandergrift High School in Leander, Texas, and Jeremy Spicer, owner of SASi Leadership, also from the Austin area, and former head band director at Vandergrift High School. So we're going to talk about the Leadership Series today and kind of dig into that program. So first of all, welcome to the program, guys.
Thanks for having us on.
This is cool because both of you guys have been in that program since the school opened. Most people watching this probably know of the Vandergrift program. They were TMEA Honor Band winner just 2 years ago, and they were Grand National Champion this past year. And they just got invited about a month ago when we did this video to Midwest Clinic for 2020. And so what they're doing in that program is obviously a very high level. And so we're excited just to have you on. So let's start with you, Mike. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your history at Vandergrift.
Yeah, so I'm wrapping up my 16th year teaching high school band. As you mentioned before, I've been at Vandergrift since it opened 11 years ago. And I came on as the assistant band director with Jeremy and became head band director in 2014. So just in wrapping up my my 6th year as the director of bands at Vandergrift, and it has certainly been a journey to have been there from the very beginning and to just see the program grow and go through the journey that it's gone through over the last 11 years. So excited about year 12. A little anxious about what it might bring, to get started, but we've got about 400 excited students gearing to go to start their band program next year. So off we go.
Very cool. And Jeremy, tell us about yourself.
I now run SASi, the leadership people, full time. Prior to that, I was a director of bands. We opened the school together with Mike in 2009. And I was there as a director of bands from 2009 to spring 2014, and then Mike took over fall 2014. So I was there 5 years as a head director. Prior to that, I was at Cedar Park High School in some capacity for 10 years. I was hired there the second year of the school, 1999, to run the visual program for them while I was still in college. Mike and I were actually at Cedar Park together for several years. Mike was one of the percussion techs and one of the visual techs, and I was one of the visual techs. So we were at Cedar Park together, college buddies, and long before that, we've known each other since elementary school. So we've kind of grown up together, we've grown up together from the early days in Floresville, Texas, and South Texas to Southwest Texas State University, now Texas State, and then Cedar Park. And then eventually I was the first assistant to Steve Wessels at Cedar Park for 8 years. And then transitioned in 2009 to Vandergrift. So it's been a fun journey. The Vandergrift project was, and I call it the project, it was just a fun experiment to just try new things. And we did it in every capacity within the program of nothing was sacred. What can we do to do things maybe differently, and just experiment. If it blows up in our face, it'll blow up in our face, and that's okay. But maybe out of all of these crazy ideas, we might find some great ones. And we did along the way. So it's been cool. And then seeing what Mike has done after the foundation he and I laid, and then taking that and just, blowing the roof off of it is nothing short of spectacular what he and his entire staff have done. So
yeah,
cool.
For sure. Hey, Mike, tell us about the staff that's there now that help out with you.
Yeah, so we have 4 band directors. One is primarily a percussion teacher, but Katie Van Dorn teaches our second band, and Dustin Tharp teaches our concert band. Katie and I split the 4th band, which is concert band 2, and then Joe Hobbs teaches our full percussion section from 6 through 12. We also have a district, very fortunate to have a district guard position. And we have Katie Hopkins. We don't really have a traditional guard, but she teaches our dance company that performs with the band. So it's a staff of 5 at Vandergrift, 4 band directors and a vision dance company director. And it's a a group of people that works together well, and a group of people that are basically in constant dialogue on how to improve things. Like Jeremy said, when we opened 11 years ago, we took the process of let's steal as many good ideas we can from all the different places we can think of, and let's combine them all into one big recipe, and let's see what happens. And I think we still take a very similar approach where we're constantly troubleshooting and trying to find ways to improve. I would say I've always thought about Leander ISD in general, but specifically about Vandergrift, it's refreshing to be around people that are constantly trying to find a better way. Whether that's a better way to improve culture, to improve music performance, or just to improve the livelihood of the staff members, you know what I mean? And being able to successfully navigate being a band director and just having a great personal life and family life and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's great staff. We obviously bring in auxiliary staff members in as much as possible. I try to, when it comes to how I invest money with our band budget, I like to invest as much money into instruction as possible. I think it gets us the best bang for our buck, so to speak. And I think it also allows a lot of young teachers to get some experience. So I love to have music education majors at the band hall with the marching band, if possible. And then obviously we have a private lesson faculty that we lean on quite a bit, not just in terms of getting kids in lessons, but in terms of educating us as a staff on the intricacies of all the different instruments, the development of instrument brands, what's the new trend, and whatever the instrument is. We have a great relationship with our private lesson faculty on campus.
Oh, great. So those that are watching get an idea of what is the background of the program at Vandergrift and kind of how they function right now in terms of personnel and what they're doing. So today's conversation was geared around leadership and the leadership program there, and that you all have established. And so kind of jump into that for those that are watching. You made it this far, then that's where this is headed. And so Mike, if you could talk about kind of what the structure looks like of your leadership program, maybe a little bit of the training, and then we kind of get about how that's evolved through the years and how you improved that program. Let's start with just what the program is.
Yeah, so we have a leadership team of about 60 students. That leadership team is kind of comprised, it's split into two major parts. One part is our students that have what we call teaching roles. So our section leaders, our drill instructors, our drum majors. And then we have the other part of our student leadership team that are in what we call logistical roles. Our communications officer, our logistics officer, technology officer, all of those different things. The students all obviously come together to form what I call the core of our band program. They are all of the different cliques and all of the different types of kids and all of the different skill levels of kids all in one place at the same time. Within the leadership team, we have very specifically defined roles for all of the kids in terms of what we expect them to do, how we expect them to do it, and when we expect them to do it, which I think is a key ingredient to any leadership team, not just band, but how many leadership teams do we have where we assign roles to these students, but we never actually tell them what they're supposed to be doing, or how or when. So we don't have a way, or they don't have a way to hold themselves accountable for whatever position that they've taken on. So with these roles, obviously comes training. Once we audition them, we get them in the door, which we've just done. We got to train them. And I think training involves two pieces. I think it involves an initial training that's usually a couple of days long. But I think that is only the start. That is the catalyst to get your leadership team started. I think a great leadership team has a ongoing conversation about what leadership is and how it's affecting the organization throughout the process of your season. So we do a training. We do very heavy instruction now on how to teach. As the band's gotten bigger, really digging in and training our students how to effectively give instruction has become an invaluable tool for the band staff. It allows us to lower our teacher to student ratio. I think we used to say that we were doing a good job training them how to teach, but we started to realize when the band got bigger and we really needed it, that maybe we weren't focusing on it as much as we should be. And it's something that we've really dug into the last couple of years, and it's proved really beneficial. So we spend a lot of time now on the training. Another part of the initial training is, again, to give very clear guidelines for all of our logistical leaders and section leaders about what we want them to do, how we want them to do it, and when we need them to do it, so that everybody gets into the season with a clear understanding of the expectation. And then from there, you know, we start rolling with our systems and processes. And this is where I think there's a gap. I know there used to be a big gap for us, as the question mark is, now what do? You know, you can't just create a student leadership with 2 days of training. It's an important thing to do, but once you do that initial training, are you continuing to talk through those concepts and to develop those concepts with your team, you know, at a once a week meeting or through consistent dialogue or informal conversations with your students? You know, how are you making that work? So that's how it's set up. We have kept our team to 60 to 70 each year. It is a large team, and you know, it's been a large team since the school opened. I think Jeremy would agree that we wanted to just make leadership what it's going to be from year one. So that first band that was 46 students, I think probably 30 of them were on the leadership team. You know what I mean? So it's not just we don't just create the leadership team as a function of making the band work. I think we utilize it as a growth opportunity for our students. It's a big part of the program. The kids learn a lot of skill sets that are going to make them successful in becoming young adults. So from the beginning, it's been a big leadership team. You know, I think early on, Jeremy and I made that. Jeremy was actually kind of the one that pushed it. You know, I remember questioning him. I was like, dude, we have less than 50 kids in the band. We really want to, we want to give 30 kids a leadership role. You know what I mean? Most of these kids are freshmen. And, you know, the thing is, no, let's develop a leadership team the way we want it to be. And let's assign all these roles and give all these kids the opportunity to go through leadership training and to learn how to teach and do all the things. So that's kind of the structure of what it looks like. Again, continuing to define roles and responsibilities for our kids and continuing to train our kids is always a point of improvement for us, and something we'll continue to work to do next year at a higher level. So yeah, there it is.
Cool. So I'm going to throw this to Jeremy, because you were there when you all started this, and right now it sounds like a well-oiled machine. We keep tweaking, you all keep tweaking to make better and make happen on that staff. But how were the first few years? Someone's trying to set up a program or kind of get it rolling. What are some things, some challenges maybe you had, Jeremy, when you were dealing with that to get this thing started and up and going?
I just think with anything, in the beginning, they were terrible. And let's just put it like their ability as a young student leader, they were 14 because they were mostly freshmen. So they were super young and not very skilled. And because of that, I think some band directors are hesitant to give them those roles. And we took the opposite approach of, you're right, they're terrible and they're not going to be very good at this, but we need to jump in and teach them how to be better at that. So I think that was one of the foundational things. Just like a beginner, when they first pick up an instrument, they're not very good. And you don't say, well, you can't be a trumpet player just because you can't play the trumpet right now. Well, they were beginner student leaders and we were a beginner band program. So we just took what it was. And I mean, SASi had been around for a while at that point in 2009. And I remember our first leadership camp, Mike and I walked away and we're just head in hands, oh no, just because their level of thinking and the depth of thinking wasn't where we wanted it to be, but it was one of those okay, well, that was eye-opening. Now we have to get them to where we want them to be and to think about things differently. And Mike continues to use it. The whole standpoint from the beginning was, if a student can, they should. Whatever that means for them. Like for you in your band program, a student can't run budget, nor should they. So they don't. But what can they do? And they can help facilitate instruction. They can put events on. They can foster the culture of their sections. They can help set up, you name it. If whatever it's in the context of a student's ability to do, they should. And that's where we challenge them to. And sometimes that was uncomfortable for them. And that's okay. And sometimes it was uncomfortable for us because it was just easier for Mike and I to just do it ourselves because we knew what it was. And in the beginning of any band program, or if you're starting a leadership thing from the ground floor and you never had this at your band program in the past, or maybe it hasn't been the most successful, leading them towards making decisions and then allowing them to fail what was a key component in a lot of this. I mean, Mike and I could have stepped in and done it ourselves or fixed it, but with any teenager or any of that, it's just allowing them to go through the learning process themselves is huge. And seeing that now in my own kids on their instruments and figuring things out for themselves a little bit, like it re-emphasizes to me how important that is. So the beginning, they just weren't very good at things, and that's okay, but we allowed them to figure it out, and we allowed them to be a part of the process of setting a couple of things up. Like I have and had some pretty strong opinions on how I wanted things done, as did Mike, and we worked through that. But we also allowed them, again, the things that they can do, we allowed them to go through trials and errors on how they're going to load the truck. And when we're sitting at the parking lot on a Friday night football game, the entire place is empty, the lights are being shut out, and we're still loading the truck, is a great opportunity for me to go up to the logistics officer and say, hey, maybe, just maybe, we should re-examine how this is being done, because everyone else is at home on their couches and we're still at the ball game trying to figure out the truck. And that allowed them opportunities to go through and, okay, yep, we're right, we're still here. So just, that's one example of several. How do we size kids for uniforms? What is the library? How's that system going to work? Like all of those things they can do, and we allowed them to do. I think there are two things that Mike said that are key components to having a successful leadership team or establishing a successful leadership team is understanding that you may have a training, and within that training, that's great, 1 day or 2 days, but you don't go to the gym for 2 days and say, look at me, I'm in shape, I'm an athlete. Like, it doesn't work that way. You don't go to a trumpet lesson and have a 2-day trumpet lesson and then walk out and go, yep, I'm a trumpet player. Like, it is an ongoing practice. And I think that's the one thing that gets left behind. We do a leadership training and they're like, okay, they're leaders. Nope, not even kind of close. It is an ongoing education, just like teaching them to be musicians in a band program. It's an ongoing education. The other thing I think is huge to what Mike said was having expectations and guidelines for them. And not just you're doing this, but because they are kids, and let's not forget that they are kids, like maybe some ideas on how they can do that so that they can be successful. Teaching them how to do it if it's way outside of their comfort zone and they've never done before, teaching them how you want it done, and then giving them guidelines and dates of when it should be done so that there are expectations in place. I know going out, I can't tell you the number of leadership seminars I've done, and one of the big complaints of the band directors is, well, they just don't do anything, or they're not doing this, or they're not doing that. And the question is always, well, have they been told? And not just told what to do, but how to do it and when to do it. And I think both of those things are huge.
That's great info. Really, really good stuff on how you've done it and what are the key components to it for anyone trying to set this up. Were there milestones or big hurdles in this 11-year process kind of that you had to break through, or things that were like kind of push you over to the next level as you were developing the leadership program and how it applied to the band?
Along the way, I mean, yeah, I think in any successful program, there are roadblocks. We had several, because we started again so small. There were a couple of cultural roadblocks, and that moment where we had a top band at one point, and then like 8 in the second band, and then there were 2 bands the second year, and then right around that second or third year, I don't remember exactly, Mike can maybe help me, but certain students that may have been in Mike's band didn't move to the top band. They may have just stayed in the second band, or they might have moved down to the third band. And the moment when the wind ensemble kids that were there from maybe the beginning, but they weren't doing everything that they needed to do, then maybe they were starting to move down. It was a big culture moment for the program where we had to lean on the student leaders a lot to help navigate through that. And some of those students that actually moved up and down and all of that were on the leadership team. And it was a challenge for us to talk to them about where they are, where they want to go, where we are, where we want the program to go culturally and from an excellence standpoint. So that was a roadblock for sure. And I just think growing pains of any band program, I think that probably the roadblocks are very similar with any leadership team, of having young kids making mistakes, or roadblocks of teaching kids how to handle disagreement and conflict with their peers and their colleagues, or how to be a leader in a marching rehearsal or a concert band setting. But then when they're hanging out with their friends, that maybe they turn the leadership light switch off a little bit. And not that they're making different decisions, but they just approach their friends more like friends and not like I'm in charge at this point kind of thing. Mike, what do you?
Yeah, you know, in terms of milestones with the leadership program, I think there's probably been a couple. I know for us, I mentioned already with the teaching aspect of the students. Once the staff started to make a conscious effort, you know, let's say we split the band up, right? And every kid's teaching their sections and all that. And, you know, it's the most comfortable thing for me to do as a band director is to run into these sections and fix horn angles and correct individuals and do all that. But it was a big milestone for us as a staff when we came to the realization what we need to be doing is focusing on the teaching. So we need to focus on the teachers, and it's hard because sometimes that means, like Jeremy said, in terms of watching kids fail, that means you're going to sit there and watch them teach the kids in not the best way, but you got to let them do it, and you got to let them have that experience. You can't jump in and save them every time. And then our job is to follow up with those leaders on how they were teaching. And that was a big milestone for us as a staff in terms of training our leadership program. And I think it also gave the students a sense of ownership in the instruction of the group, where they know when we come over and we're hanging out with their subsection, that we're not watching the kids or the students, we're watching the teacher. We're watching that young teacher give feedback and follow up on what they're saying, and, you know, get reps in and do all that kind of stuff. So that was a big milestone with the program.
Can I jump in on that real quick, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just, Chad, to break it down for a band director that wants to know how that would look. In the beginning, it was Mike and I, and then eventually Paul and I, Paul Pape. But what it would be is either Mike or I would run the big block, and then we'd split off into subsections, right? So we're all in subsections. Mike and I and the drum majors are walking around watching the student leaders as he's talking about. And then we send them back to big block, either with Mike or with myself. And then all the student leaders go to a band director. While one of the band directors is running the big block, off on the back sideline, you'll see Mike and the drum majors talking to the student leadership team for 5 minutes. And it's not a big diatribe, and it's not a big discussion. It's, you're talking too much. You need to move faster. You need to do this. Make sure you're doing that. And that, so you're giving instruction on teaching. The kids run back, you do a water break, and then you come back and you rinse, repeat for a visual rehearsal. So I just wanted to give kind of a system for it. So if you're a band director, they're wondering what that might look like, that's how we did it. Back to you, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, it's that same kind of thing regarding training. You know, we do a big teach how to teach segment in our leadership training, but then we all know as teachers, we all spent 4 years in college learning how to be teachers. And then we started teaching band, and I was like, oh no, you know, now I'm really in it. What do I do? It's the same thing for these students, except magnify it because they're 16, 17 years old. So they're going to get the bulk of their learning through experience. We're going to give them everything we can ahead of time, but they're going to get the bulk. They're going to get better at it by doing it. So we got to let them do it. And going around to different schools and getting the opportunity to do leadership clinics and things like that for SASi, I think there's always oftentimes a bit of hesitancy and concern to truly allow and empower their students to give instruction. And it is scary, you know, because we want our kids to be great. And, you know, I am very protective personally on anybody that I have come in and teach my students or my band or whatever. So it's one of those things it's tough. And it was a big milestone when we really let it happen. But let me tell you, you know, Jeremy talked about teaching the big block. Well, that's what happens first. You know, if we're doing a marching fundamentals block, you know, Katie will introduce a concept to the big block. But that person is just doing that. They're introducing, they're facilitating. The real teaching happens through individual correction and feedback. You know what I mean? And there's no way you can do that standing there surrounded by 300 kids or whatever. So you split them up, and that's where the leaders reinforce the concept, and they are the catalyst for providing feedback and follow up to all the individuals. And man, it's a powerful tool once you allow them to get the experience. Like anything else, every year we get to summer band and we get to our first, even though we've practiced it and we've done all the training, we split up and we go, here we go, kids. They've got lesson plans, like they're ready. They know how much time they're going to have. And we walk around and they're just not very good. And it's okay. We take a deep breath, talk about improvement points, and they get a little bit better the next day and a little bit better the next day. And just like everything else in your program is a process of improvement, not a sudden improvement, so is the instructional capabilities of the student leaders.
Let me chime in real quick on something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that, when you're teaching, Chad, teach them how to teach band directors out there. A lot of us focus solely on the communication aspect of it, of being comfortable in front of a group, being able to not stumble and fumble on your words, to facilitate it. Like that's the speech of teaching. That's the system of I can clap with the metronome and say the words and then go to at ease and then give them some feedback and do it again. But the key, and Mike has become a master at this recently, of teaching them the diagnostic part, as you know, as a band director, is as important or more important than the other side of it. So being able to, a kid being able to look at someone and be the doctor of that visual situation that's going on, or a music situation if they're music sectionals. I think that we have to teach them not only the speech and the communication aspect of it, but how to diagnose things. And are they using their eyes? And it's not just, are they rushing or dragging? Like, how do we get the leg shape to look the way we want? How do we put that? And then the same thing musically, if you're using your student teachers to musically teach, how do you get them to get to the right answer? And a lot of that is just putting them in the situation and not even talking about the speech, just ask them, what'd you see? What did you see? And then, okay, if they get the right answer, now how are we going to fix that? And start giving them tools and prescriptions for the issues that are going on.
And that's really cool stuff. And just talking on that, like on a percentage of it, let's say an hour rehearsal, Mike, how much of that, because this is for teachers, is how much of that would be students running that rehearsal? Let's say in summer band, you have an hour of visual time. How much of that is a kid working with the group versus someone running the block?
Yeah, I would say a general formula, and it kind of depends on where you are in the process, but a general formula would be a 15 to 20 minute introduction of a concept, hands-on introduction, obviously, where the kids are in big block, and then typically a 15 to 20 minute breakout session into their subsections, trumpets, flutes, clarinets, so on and so forth. And then one of two things will happen. They'll come back together as a full big block to reinforce the concept as a big group, or they'll come back together with their large section, the brass section, the woodwind section, or the percussion section, again, so that we can keep the groups a little bit smaller, and we'll reinforce the concept that way. But I would say it's probably, you're talking in an hour rehearsal, let's say we're introducing 3 concepts, you know, 1 step forward, 4 steps forward, and 8 steps with a tendu close at the end or whatever. Then you're probably going to have in that hour about 30 to 40 minutes of time split up into sections. And in that time, just to talk systems and processes, there are 3 levels of things happening. There are the students giving direct instruction. So all of our drill instructors or section leaders that we've already pre-assigned to give instruction to their sections, they're coordinating the splits, right? There's our drum major team, and it's this year it's a group of 4 students. The drum major team is doing what the band directors wish they could do, which is diving into those subsections and fixing individuals and just help being secondary teachers to all of our student leaders that are teaching. And then the band directors, the staff's job, as I said before, is to evaluate the teaching so that we can give feedback. And typically, like Jeremy said, the system is for that feedback to be done in a quick small group setting immediately following the breakout session. it's like, oh my goodness, this kid is struggling, 911 kind of thing, then we may pull that student aside and have an individual conversation with them just about improvement before we get to the next session. But yeah, I would say it's 15 together, 15 split, quick back together, and then, you know, lather, rinse, repeat kind of thing on how we do it.
I think that perspective is good for two reasons. One, if it's a smaller school where you don't have a staff or people you can bring in to help, it's just 2 band directors, 3 band directors. Or in this situation where schools may or may not be able to hire extra staff also, no matter the size of the band directors, with our school closures and not the unknown of the next year and whatnot. So, I mean, I think these are
absolutely
highly valuable tools for people to take and use. And how do I make this adjustment even in this time? Just not just a regular year, but even more so now, using and leaning on the leadership.
I think what's key to, oh, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
And Chad, you know, on that, I always want to look, I value some of the marching techs that come and work with us and that have done great things for us, but I never want to bank on having that instructional capability. You know, we will bring people on as a way to benefit our program and a way to benefit music education, but I want to make sure that we're able to run things with the full staff and student leaders that we have. And I think I agree. I came from a small school myself, as I know Jeremy did. I came from a small 3A band in Hondo, Texas, and it's a different situation. And the value of having quality student instruction, I mean, the sky's the limit in that situation. And again, it empowers ownership over the program, which, you know, that leads you to a whole nother culture side of student leadership outside of just the logistical side that we're talking now. And in terms of students being engaged in what's going on, there's no better tool than finding sources of creating student ownership. And I think this instructional piece is a big part of that. Jeremy, what were you going to say?
I was just going to chime in, Chad. I think the key to teaching leaders how to do anything is that immediate feedback, what they've done. So when they split off, they're teaching, they're doing the thing, and then it's not wait 30 minutes or wait till lunch or wait till the end of the day. It's immediate. This is what we're doing. We need to make sure we're making these adjustments, and we're giving feedback in the context and the process of it all, and not waiting to the end.
Very cool. Awesome. This is great stuff, and how people can maybe even use this even better for people listening. I know one of the things we talked about is, Jeremy, I know you run the SASi, the leadership people, and do camps all over the state and I think the country now. And it is spectacular. I brought you and your people into our band hall here and do fabulous work. What are some things you can see for directors in using maybe through SASi or just leadership things that you've learned also that can help getting ready for a summer band? And then on top of that, also the closed, and who knows what summer band will be like.
I think as much as you can do when we are back to normal, quote unquote, back to normal, and we're able to do things as we always have, then I think if you brought in a leadership facilitator like the SASi organization or whoever you bring in, I think the key to a successful training is that it's experiential and that it's based on experiences. We try to, in as much as possible, have the sessions, as you know, with your students to look as little like school as possible. There is school involved, there is notebooks, and there's some notes taking, and then there's dialogue and there's learning involved, but we try to make it as experiential and as experience-based and action-based as possible. And I think that's key to a successful leadership training. And even moving into the virtual world, which, as all teachers, you're all fabulous across the country have had to do. We're doing the same thing within the SASi leadership model. We've moved to a virtual platform, and I'm still trying. We did one with Pam Hyatt and her band students at Midway, and we have another one this weekend. I'm still trying to ensure that part of it, the experiential process part of it, is still there, and trying to create experiences even through a computer, which it is hard, but it can be done. So I think with all of this, it is thrust everyone, teachers, band students, and that's in our own little bubble, but that's who we're talking to right now, way out of our comfort zone. And some of it's hard for us to see right now, but one of the mantras we talk about, and you've heard me say a lot, is some of the best experiences we'll ever have in our life occur outside of the comfort zones. But we may not know that right now. There's that great Office video. It's like 15 minutes long or 15 seconds long. And I'm not an Office fan, so I don't know the character's name, but what he says is so poignant. And he says that, wouldn't it be great to know that we're living the best of times when we're in the best of times? And it's always this look back on. So I would say don't let any of this get in the way. And this being all of this, the world that's being created right now, like there's always a way. There's always a way. There's always a path forward. We may not know it at the time, but we just got to try. So all that's my down on a rabbit trail of stay positive. We got this, people. But I just think anything that you can do to create experiences, not just lectures, I think is key for the students to succeed in a leadership training. And that you could have a successful leadership training in 2 hours, or you can have one that's 2 days. It just all depends on how you formulate it and what you're trying to get the students to get out of it. I know that's kind of a broad stroke, but I think it's so important.
Yeah, and it's what we have to deal with and what we're fronted with and the challenge we all have to face. And there's a lot of reality to it, but who knows, what we get out of this might be more beneficial in some ways than some parts of it might be more beneficial in the process.
Because you've been at your school for how long now?
13 years.
Yeah, 13. And Mike has been at Vandergrift for 11. And yet, Mike, we were talking before this started about having to rethink everything, which is a bit maddening. And I can't imagine what y'all are having to go through. But somewhere in that rethinking of things, when things do get back to normal or the new normal, whatever that looks like, I bet there's going to be some processes that band directors across the country take out of this experience and like, we could do that this way. And it made it better. It made it less time consuming. It made it whatever. It made it something and improved on a process that existed in the past. Now, of course, we can't wait to get back to where we can sit down and kids put instruments to their face and we get to hear music again. That can never be replaced by this ridiculousness. But there are plenty of things that can. And I think that's key to all of this. Leadership, training, whatever, you name it. I think it's key to everything. Virtual seminars can exist, and they've been great. We did student leadership audition prep stuff, and there are a bunch of people doing it. Bobby Lambert's doing it around the country. They're all great, and everyone is they're taking the same approach of how can we get to students to help them be successful for their band programs. And I mean, we had nearly 2,000 students over 4 different Fridays participate in our trainings, and they were literally all over the world. It's kind of a neat thing to be able to talk to students from the Valley of Texas, Connecticut, and Canada all at the same time. It was a neat experience, and to be able to hear their takes on things was neat. So I will say this too, for the audience out there, being fortunate enough, we are nationwide now, and we're in 27 states training students. We did 127 camps last year, and it's just neat to be able to see that the thing that ties us all together across the country is music. And for as different as we are, we're all the same. We're a bunch of band nerds just trying to do the very best thing possible for kids across the country. And it's really neat to see that from California to Florida to Indiana to the Midwest to the far Northeast, like you name it. It's just a bunch of band nerds trying to create music together, and it's wonderful. We'd love to have you. We currently have right at 90 camps scheduled for this year before things all got wrenches thrown in them. And we have plans to either do virtually, or if band programs are allowed to be back in band halls, we'll come to them. So we're doing both. So
and you have like a leadership. You usually have big camps, but you have some of those scheduled in June already, also, correct?
Yes, we have some drum major camps scheduled. Online drum major seminars. We have Dr. Nick Williams, who's now the director of the Melbourne Conservatory in Australia. He was formerly at the University of North Texas. He was a part of our leadership trainings, audition prep training, all the way from Australia, which was really cool, watching one of my best friends teach conducting through a computer in Australia. We did it at night, which was like 6 a.m. for him, so he would get up and have his coffee and teach conducting. But yeah, we have camps in the June 13, 14, June 27, 28, and July 11, 12. So spaced out throughout the summer for any students that want to do drum major training. We've had several band directors ask, well, could I send my color guard and they just mute them or turn their video off during the conducting portion? And yeah, the answer to that is absolutely. So we have, it looks like right now, 10 or 11 color guard members from around the state are going to be coming on as well, just to participate in the leadership aspect of this and not the conducting aspect of it. So we can make almost anything and everything work. And we'll do so for your students and programs.
Very cool. And if you Google SASi, you can find that information too. I've seen that. This has been great. Do you guys have any final thoughts regarding leadership that you'd like to share? I guess I'll throw this to Mike first.
I would just say that something to consider in regard to program culture and how it relates to your leadership team is, we were talking milestones earlier. For many years, we tried to approach positive culture with our social officers through establishing, parties and get-togethers and section events and all those kind of things, which those things are important and they exist and we continue to do them. But I think it's important, one of the biggest things we use the SASi leadership model for with our leadership team is to establish culture through how we spend 90% of the time with our students, which is rehearsal. The culture of your program is established through what kind of experience those students have when they're rehearsing in your band. All of the pool parties and t-shirts can't shift a culture that is maybe negative during a rehearsal setting. We talk to our students a lot when it comes to culture about deposits and withdrawals, to our program. And, one of our jobs is to continue to find a way to give feedback, because that's what we do, right? We're performing arts instructors. We give feedback and we give critique, but how can we do that in a way that we're still creating deposits into a positive program culture throughout our rehearsal experiences? And if it's all withdrawals during rehearsal, man, there's no amount of social events that will fill up that withdrawal. You know what I'm saying? That will deposit enough. So a big milestone for our team has been to talk about how that rehearsal environment looks. How do we have an extremely high expectation while creating a positive situation for the students? If the culture of our program is how we rehearse and what that environment is, okay, so let's have an honest discussion about what the culture of our program really looks like. So I think, that has been that 2-day training that we have before the season starts, where we really utilize that SASi model. That has been an invaluable tool that we use that model for. We have our own systems and processes for logistics and expectations and all of those things for all of our different student leaders. But I think bringing in somebody or bringing in a set of modules that helps guide students towards how to deliver feedback in a positive way, how to establish relationships, how to build on a platform that allows you to have a positive culture in that 90% of time together, which is your rehearsal time, I think is huge. So don't overlook that. I would say when you divide your band time, the time you see your band up, into percentages, and whatever that largest percentage is, which we're all going to find is rehearsal, then start to ask yourself some tough reflective questions about what type of experience your students are getting during that, whatever that largest percentage time is. So just something to consider that I know has been a huge game changer as we continue to progress and the program continues to get bigger.
And that goes a lot to your culture you all have created through the years too. So kudos to you. Very good. Jeremy, any last thoughts?
I just want to double down on and reemphasize that if a student can, they should. Whatever that is. And I think that needs to be a conversation where the band staff gets together and just starts throwing out those things. What are the things that they can do? whatever it is, and make a list. Start creating that now. If you're starting this from scratch or rebuilding a leadership program, what are the things that you wish they would do? And just create the list. And then figure out how. Maybe they can figure out how on their own, but if there are some things that they're going to need some help on, figure out some hows to help guide them, so that you're teaching them not only what the expectations are, but maybe how they should do it, why they should do it, and when they should do it. I think that will be key for them as young beginner leaders. And if you think about it like that, it kind of calms everything down. If you understand that they're just like a beginner trumpet player, they're a beginner student leader. If you take that approach and teach them everything that they need along the way, then eventually they're going to be able to help your band program succeed at levels maybe you didn't even think were possible. And they'll have an ownership in the program more than you ever thought possible, simply because they were able to be a part of this leadership team with you and alongside you. So if a student can, they should. I think that would be my one piece of advice.
Well, fantastic stuff, guys. Just bravo to both of you and sharing your expertise and your experiences and how to get one of the great band programs right now in 2020, what you do from a leadership standpoint, and give some tips to directors and how we can all make this better. So thanks for jumping on here and talking a little bit about this. What a great topic and great insight from both of you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chad.
And for anyone else out there, you want to see more videos like this, check out the Hey Band Network YouTube channel or on social media on Facebook to see other videos in the leadership and remote teaching series. Thank you all for joining us today.